Hi everyone! In this video we're going to go over how to use Kinovea to analyze a sporting motion that involves a tool and a movable object. Now, the tool might be something like a golf club, whereas the movable object might be something like a golf ball. Other examples could include hitting a hockey puck with a hockey stick, or hitting a baseball with a baseball bat. Really, any activity that involves hitting a ball or a puck or any other movable object with a tool. And what we're going to analyze is the movement or the velocity at where that tool comes in contact with the movable object and at your hands to get an idea of how that tool impacts our velocity. To perform this activity, you're going to want to either pre-record a video of yourself or a friend performing that sporting motion, or record that video in Kinovea. If you forget how to record the video and input it into Kinovea, or record the video in Kinovea, please review the tutorial that you were given for Lab 1. That tutorial goes over how to record a video and import it into Kinovea and record videos in Kinovea, but we're not going to be going over that information in this video tutorial. To begin your analysis, you're going to want to have your video imported into Kinovea. The example that we're going to be using in this tutorial is going to be a golf swing. So I'm going to start with my video of my participant performing a golf swing. In this video, I have used a meter stick to substitute a golf club. That way I know the exact length of the tool that I am using, and I have placed a marker on my participant at their hands and where the tool, which is our golf club in this situation, would come in contact with our movable object, which is our golf ball. And so we have a marker here, which is where we would come in contact with our golf ball, and we have a marker here, which is right at our hands. The first thing I want to do is I want to cut down my video to a smaller working video that includes only the segments that I'm interested in. So I'm going to try to find where that movement starts so that I can make that the start of my new working video, so I have less video to work with. So my participant starts to move, and we reach the start of our movement of interest right about here, where our participant is done with their backswing and is going into our movement in which we would hit the golf ball. So I'm going to mark this location as the start of our working video by hitting this open bracket right here. And that's going to narrow my video down. It's going to take a second to process. Now I want to find the end of my working video. And then I'm going to hit the close bracket to mark the end of my working video. And it doesn't look like our start of the working video worked, so we're just going to redo that. Sometimes that happens and the computer program just glitches, so try to do it again. I'm going to again find the start of our working video, so that's the start of our movement of interest. And again, you're going to find the moment where we're starting the movement in the forward direction towards that movable object. So in this situation, I'm cutting out the backswing and I'm just going to take the forward motion. I'm going to again hit the open brackets to mark the start of my working video. And it looks like it worked this time. So we're good to head forward into the second part of our analysis. So in this part of our analysis, I'm going to find a frame in which I can see the golf club clearly. Because I know that that golf club is measured at 1 meter long, I'm going to use that as a tool to analyze the distance that the golf club is actually moving. So similar to what we did in our first lab, I am going to mark the length of that golf club is our known distance in our frame. So if you're not using an object or a tool that you know the measurements of, you're going to want to add an object or a tool into your frame so that you can use the measurements of that object or tool. It could be some object that you've added into the frame. It also could be the length of your participant's thigh or the length of your participant's shin. Any known distance within your frame is a valid reference to use as your known distance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click my line tool down here. I'm going to left click that line tool, and then I'm going to hit at the start of my tool, which again is my known distance within my frame. Left click that and drag that all the way to the end of my tool. And now I have my known distance highlighted as a line. I'm going to hit my move tool, left click my move tool so that I can safely move that new line I've created off. And I'm going to right click that line and go to visibility, and I'm going to hit always visible so that stays in frame during my whole video. Then I'm going to right click again and go down to configuration, and I can rename the line if you want to. You can hit apply, and then you're going to go down to calibrate, and you're going to make sure that your segment is inputted to the correct measurement. So in my case it's already, or in my case I'm going to switch it to meters, and I have 1 meter measurement for that line there. And so I know in real life that that line does in fact measure 1 meters, so that is correct. And what this is going to tell Kinovea is that if my participant moves that distance of pixels in the video, then they're actually moving 1 meter in real life, and that's going to allow Kinovea to calculate realistic velocities in distances traveled. I'm going to make sure that the coordinate system alignment is set to aligned with image axis. I'm going to hit apply. And next thing I want to do is I want to move this line tool so that it's kind of out of the way for our movement. And then I'm going to watch my video through to make sure the line tool is out of the way for my movement. And it looks like it is. So what I want to do next is I want to make sure that I go all the way back to the start of my video. It is important that you start the next process on the first frame of your video, because if you do not, when we create our digital trackers, which is our next step, it will not populate for previous frames of the video. It will only populate forward through the video. So you will need to go back and start at the first frame of your video if you do not do so when you start creating your digital trackers. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to create our digital trackers. So you are going to hover over the hand, and you're going to right click over the hand and hit track path when that menu pops up. Then you're going to hover over this new box that's appeared, hit right click and go into configuration. It's going to bring up a closer view of what you're actually imaging, and you're going to want to modify the location of this crosshairs so that it's over top of your marker. So my marker for my hands is right here, so I'm going to make sure it sits over top of my marker for my hands. And then you're going to want to rename this digital marker that you've now created. So I'm going to name this digital marker hands, and hit apply. And the next thing we're going to be doing is pretty similar to what we've done in previous tutorials. You're going to move through the video frame by frame, readjusting the location of these crosshairs so that it sits over our real life marker. If you're ever unsure, you can always right click and go back into configuration so that you bring up this larger view so that you can see the image more closely and you can readjust these crosshairs more finely. So again, use this go to next frame button, just grab forward to the next frame, and continue doing that through to the end of your video, just making sure that this crosshair tracks over your real life marker. So that is your digital marker tracking over your real life marker. And to adjust, just grab and pull that box so that it's right over the real life marker. Now that you've done that and gone through every single frame of your video, rewatch your video to ensure that it does accurately track the position of your hands. And it looks like we are accurately tracking the position of our hands. So then you're going to add your second digital tracker. Make sure, again, before you add this digital tracker, you return to the first frame of your video. Again, that is important because if you are not at the first frame of your video, when you input your digital tracker, the digital tracker will not populate for previous frames of your video, and that's going to cause problems in your analysis. So this tracker is going to go at the location on the tool where the tool is going to interact with that movable object. So in our situation, because we're using a golf club, hitting a golf ball, we're going to put that digital tool at the very end of our simulated golf club. In other situations, you might have something like a baseball bat interacting with a baseball. You might want to put that digital marker at the center of the baseball bat. So I am going to do the same thing I've done previously. I'm going to right click and hit track path right over where our tool will interact with our ball. And then I can again right click and hit configuration to bring up a larger image and add some fine adjustments. And then hit, and then rename that digital marker. So in this situation, I'm going to name it tool because this is the digital marker for our tool that we're using, and then hit apply. And so the next thing I'm going to do is exactly the same thing I did for my previous digital marker. I'm going to go frame by frame and make sure that my digital marker is tracking the real location in our video that you want it to be tracking for every single frame. And now that you're done that and you've gone through every single frame, again, rewatch your video to make sure that the digital marker is tracking correctly for every single frame. And now that I'm confident that my digital marker is tracking as accurately as possible for every single one of my frames, I'm going to move on to gathering my data. But first I want to point out that you can now see the complete angular motion of both the hands and the end of my golf club, or where my golf club is going to come in contact with my golf ball. It's important that you film your video of your motion from a plane that is going to show the complete motion. So it might not be the same frame for your motion depending on what motion you've picked, so you might have to use some critical thinking here to make sure that the plane of motion that you've captured your video in is going to show the complete movement of both the hand and the tool. So just make sure that you're critically thinking about what angle to capture your video from when it comes to preparing that for your analysis. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to go into Tools, and you're going to go into Linear Kinematics, and you're going to bring up that pop-up menu. And now you should see a diagram that looks something like this. So there's a couple things we're going to check before we download this diagram. You can change the title of this diagram to something that is more accurate. So I'm going to call this Golf Swing Speed. And we're looking for time to be either an absolute or relative. And it's going to show up in milliseconds down here for my video. It might be different for yours, but just make sure it's understandable to you. And then the data we're looking for is going to be our speed. And then you're going to export this data So you're going to want to export the graph. So go down to where it says export graph and then hit save to file. And you can save it somewhere on your desktop where you know where it's going to be. If you have any questions about this lab, please feel free to reach out to your TAs or review previous tutorials on Kinovea. Okay, good luck everyone with your lab.